What are the benefits and challenges of downsizing your living space? Let's explore the truth about tiny homes. Why are so many people choosing to live in less than 400 square feet? The tiny house movement has exploded in recent years, captivating people around the world with its message of simplicity, freedom, and financial liberation. For many, a smaller living space represents a larger life, one that's full of purpose, rather than possessions. But building a tiny home is not just about shrinking your square footage. It's a lifestyle shift that challenges everything you thought you needed to live comfortably. From rethinking storage to redefining success, the process forces you to get intentional in ways you never imagined. We'll break down what it takes to create and sustain a tiny home step by step. Whether you're dreaming of going off-grid or just want to simplify your life, we'll explore the real costs, the design thinking, the mental shift, and the legal and social dynamics behind living small. So, is tiny house living just a trend, or is it a doorway to a new way of life? Let's find out. What makes a house tiny, and how does it actually function day to day? Tiny houses are typically under 400 square feet and are designed with efficiency and intention. But the size is only part of the story. What defines a tiny home is how well it supports the life of its owner, while focusing only on the essentials and eliminating wasted space. These homes often feature open layouts, lofted sleeping areas, multi-use furniture, and clever storage hidden in every corner. Every inch is maximized, often resulting in spaces that feel surprisingly livable. The architecture may vary from rustic cabins to modern steel structures, but the core design principles remain the same. People drawn to tiny living are often seeking freedom from debt, clutter, and the fast pace of modern life. Living in a smaller space encourages more time outside, greater resourcefulness, and a focus on relationships and experiences. Yet, transitioning from a full-sized home to a tiny house can feel drastic. It requires you to rethink what you actually need, and for many, that's where the journey truly begins. Understanding what tiny living really means helps lay the foundation for whether or not this lifestyle is right for you. How do you turn limited square footage into a comfortable, functional living space? Great tiny house design starts with understanding your habits. Do you work from home? Cook daily? Have pets? Your layout should reflect your life, not a generic aesthetic. Without thoughtful design, even a beautiful tiny house can feel like a cramped box. Key features of efficient tiny home design include convertible furniture, vertical storage, and open layouts. Everything in the space should serve more than one function. Tables that fold down from the wall, beds that convert to sofas, and staircases with built-in drawers are standard in most tiny home designs. Natural light is a secret weapon in tiny house design. Large windows and skylights make a small space feel much bigger, while consistent color schemes create flow and calm. Materials and finishes also play a psychological role. Wood can offer warmth, white walls maximize brightness, and mirrors can visually expand the space. The goal is to reduce visual clutter and create a sense of ease. Ultimately, the best tiny homes are not just small, they're smart. They prioritize utility without sacrificing beauty or comfort. Is tiny house living truly affordable, or is that just a myth? The answer depends on how you approach the build. A DIY tiny house can cost as little as $10,000 if you repurpose materials and do much of the work yourself. On the other hand, a professionally built tiny house with premium finishes can easily reach $80,000 to $100,000. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, spending between $30,000 and $60,000 on a basic but high-quality home. Costs can rise if you go off-grid, include solar panels, composting toilets, or rainwater collection systems. But it's not just about construction. You'll need to consider land costs, parking fees, insurance, and utility setups. Will your home be on wheels or a foundation? Will you connect to city services or stay off-grid? These decisions all impact cost. You also have to factor in time. DIY projects take months, sometimes years to complete, especially for first-time builders. That labor has a value, even if it doesn't show up on your balance sheet. Still, even with these factors, tiny living often leads to significant savings in the long run, especially when you eliminate mortgage payments, reduce utility bills, and avoid unnecessary consumption. What internal shifts are necessary to thrive in a smaller home? Living tiny forces you to face your relationship with stuff. Suddenly, every item you own must justify its presence. You begin to question why you've held on to so many things and whether they truly serve you anymore. This clarity can be freeing. Many people report a sense of emotional lightness once they shed their clutter. Fewer things mean fewer decisions, fewer distractions, and fewer things to clean, organize, or maintain. But the psychological transition isn't always easy. Downsizing can bring up feelings of loss or scarcity, especially if you're used to associating space with success or identity. You'll need to redefine your idea of what abundance looks like. Tiny house living also encourages mindfulness in other areas: how you spend your time, what you consume, how you interact with your space. It becomes less about restriction and more about intentionality. The greatest transformation in tiny living happens not in the walls but in the mind. It's a new way of thinking, not just a new way of living. How eco-friendly can a tiny house really be, and is it worth the effort? Tiny houses naturally consume fewer resources. They use less energy to heat and cool, require fewer materials to build, and encourage minimalism by design. But many owners go further, transforming their homes into powerful sustainability tools. Solar panels, rainwater harvesting, composting toilets, and gray water systems are all common upgrades for those who want to reduce their environmental impact. Even small gardens or permaculture beds add a layer of self-reliance. Sourcing reclaimed or eco-friendly materials also plays a big role. From bamboo flooring to recycled steel siding, green options are increasingly available for every stage of construction. Beyond the structure itself, tiny living promotes conscious consumption. With limited space, people buy less, waste less, and rely more on local, seasonal, and secondhand items. If sustainability is a priority for you, a tiny house can be an incredibly effective tool, not just for shrinking your footprint, but for aligning your home with your values. What are the legal realities of living tiny, and how do you navigate them? Zoning laws remain one of the biggest challenges in the tiny house movement. While some cities welcome them as accessory dwellings or affordable housing, others have outdated codes that make full-time tiny living difficult. Mobile tiny houses are often classified as RVs, which often limits where and how long you can stay at a given location. Foundation-based tiny homes face setbacks and minimum square footage rules that vary widely. To live legally, many owners seek out tiny house-friendly municipalities, rural land, or purpose-built communities. Others live on family property or as a second structure behind a primary residence. The legal landscape is improving. States like Oregon, California, and Colorado are slowly embracing tiny homes through specific ordinances and ADU provisions. But it still takes research, flexibility, and sometimes even negotiation. Before building or buying, make sure you understand your local zoning laws. The freedom of tiny living starts with knowing the rules. Can you still build strong social ties while living in a tiny home? Absolutely. And in fact, many tiny homeowners say their sense of community has grown stronger. Shared spaces and minimal interiors often push people outdoors, where they naturally connect with neighbors and nature alike. Tiny home villages are emerging all over the country, offering shared amenities like gardens, kitchens, co-working spaces, and tool sheds. These spaces foster collaboration, mutual support, and more sustainable living. Even those living solo use digital platforms to stay connected. Facebook groups, festivals, and tiny house networks bring people together to share tips, stories, and inspiration. Because the movement is values-driven, it naturally attracts people with similar goals: sustainability, simplicity, and freedom. That makes community easier to form and maintain, even without large living rooms or spare bedrooms. Far from isolating, tiny living often becomes the catalyst for deeper connection, not less. Is tiny living the answer to modern life's biggest pressures? For many people, tiny living represents a powerful alternative to the consumer-driven lifestyle that dominates much of the modern world. It's not just about smaller houses, it's about bigger values. Living tiny is often a direct response to skyrocketing housing costs, constant digital noise, and the emotional burden of clutter and complexity. At a time when more feels overwhelming, tiny homes offer a way to focus on what actually matters. Still, tiny living isn't just sunshine and simplicity. It requires intention, planning, and sacrifice. You'll need to make tough decisions about what to keep, where to live, and how to function in a much smaller space. Legal challenges, weather extremes, and spatial limitations are real and can be daunting. But for many who make the leap, those challenges are part of what makes the lifestyle so rewarding. Overcoming them builds a sense of ownership, clarity, and pride. Beyond the practical aspects, tiny homes invite a shift in mindset. You start thinking in terms of usefulness, beauty, and presence. You notice the value in slowness. You learn to live deliberately. Without the distraction of extra rooms and unnecessary things, your energy can be redirected to experiences, relationships, and growth. For some, this leads to a quieter life. For others, it opens the door to travel, creativity, or entrepreneurship. The space you lose in square footage, you often gain in opportunity. There's also the social and environmental impact to consider. With a lower carbon footprint, less waste, and smaller bills, tiny homes promote sustainable living in a way that few other housing options do. And by challenging norms around what's enough, they quietly push back against cultural messages that tie success to size. Choosing to live small is a bold declaration that freedom, not accumulation, is the ultimate luxury. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, uninspired, or stuck in the cycle of bigger is better, maybe it's time to ask a new question. What would it look like to build a life designed around purpose, not possessions? Would less truly give you more? Tiny living might not be for everyone, but for those who embrace it, the rewards seem to be profound, lasting, and deeply personal. Would you live in a tiny house? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more minimalist living content and creative design inspiration. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.